So our next presenter is Coralyn, and Coralyn, Master of Information Studies, Master of Information Studies at Dalhousie University. We'll be presenting on information literacy in Nova Scotia, systematic mapping of learning outcomes. Coralyn, you have the mic, please.
Great, thank you. Unfortunately, my video seems to not be working, but one moment. Okay, so my name is Coralyn, and I'll be talking about information literacy in Nova Scotia. It's a systematic mapping of high school learning outcomes. So there's two research questions that drove this project. The first is, which Nova Scotia high school courses promote information literacy as seen in the learning outcomes for each course? And what aspects of the ACRL information literacy framework appear more frequently in the Nova Scotia high school learning outcomes? In Canada, people between the ages of 18 and 24 are the largest group of social media users. Social media sites are becoming more and more integrated into the lives of the younger generations. A study conducted by Matsubayashi and Freud found young adults in Canada are seeking their news information from social media platforms. What should be of concern is the amount of fake news that spreads on these sites. Social media sites are superconductors for the spread of all types of distorted information. A survey conducted by the Social Media Lab in May 2020 concluded with Canadians reporting exposure to COVID-19 misinformation on all social media platforms, including messaging apps. While this suggests Canadians are able to identify some misinformation online, May also found that almost 60% of Canadians who spotted fake news on social media platforms did not report it. This suggests they may not understand that they have a role to play in contributing to a healthy information ecosystem. Social media companies expect their users to flag misinformation. For this study, I am looking at high school learning outcomes provided by the provincial government. For those of you that do not know, the Canadian education system is governed by provincial governments. So I'm looking at the learning outcomes created by the government of Nova Scotia. Core language courses focus on proficiency in vocabulary and dialogue. Students learn the fundamentals of grammar through listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Content is simple and focuses on retention and production of vocabulary and sentence structure. The knowledge, practices, and dispositions of the ACRL information literacy threshold concepts are not consistent with the learning objectives of language classes. For those reasons, language classes were excluded from this study. Nova Scotia also has two education boards. They have an English one and a French one. For this study, I focused on the English one only. The College Board for Advanced Placement and the International Baccalaureate Program are governed by other bodies other than the government, so those courses are also not included in this study. A total of 3,998 learning outcomes were extracted from the curriculum documents. Some of the learning outcomes were explicit in having information literacy, while others had the potential to include information literacy. Regardless if it was explicit or not, any learning outcome that was related to information literacy was included and assessed further. Integrated, as I talked about, integrated abilities are what make up the ACRL's definition of information literacy. The ACRL defines information literacy as a set of integrated abilities encompassing the reflective discovery of information, the understanding of how information is produced and valued, and the use of information in creating new knowledge and participating ethically in communities of learning. The first integrated ability is reflective discovery of information. It focuses on metacognition, which is an awareness of one's own thought process. It is an understanding of how one may perceive the information they are exposed to and how they process new information based on their culture, experiences, and privileges. The second integrated ability, understanding how information is produced and valued, refers to understanding that information may be packaged formally and informally, and that how information is packaged does not dictate the quality and validity of information. Additionally, the second integrated ability includes understanding that different cultures, ethnicities, and countries value information differently. The third integrated ability, which is use of information in creating new knowledge and participating ethically in communities of learning, refers to the production of information. Information literacy instruction teaches learners that their participation in information dissemination is as important as their ability to source out accurate information. The way we produce and disseminate information has a direct influence on the people we associate with. There are 6 threshold concepts for the ACRL Information Literacy for Higher Education framework. Authority is constructed and contextual, information creation as a process, information has value, research as inquiry, scholarship as conversation, and search as strategic exploration. Here you can see there I've attached a couple of learning outcomes that I've coded for these individual threshold concepts to give you an idea of kind of what I've been doing. So authority is constructed and contextual threshold concepts focuses on ownership and authorship by defining types of authority and determining credibility, accuracy, reliability, and generally the social nature of information. Information creation as a process expands students' understanding of proper citation, intellectual property, and the laws that govern it. And it also highlights the using information ethically. This threshold concept develops students' skills in citation creation, the difference between open access and paid resources, understanding the use of copyright laws and fair use, and in general, understanding the importance of proper recognition of others' work. The value of information is determined based on commodity, education, influence, negotiation, and understanding of the world, and or by civic, socioeconomic, or personal gain. Research as inquiry seeks to answer complex, innovative questions through processes that require problem solving that focuses on the need of an individual, a profession, or society. Scholarship as conversation is about new discoveries, interpretations, perspectives, and or issues that are shared within scholarship and professionals all over the world to exchange accurate, authentic, and credible and reliable information. Participating in information sharing ensures accountability and challenges authority. While participating in scholarly discourse, researchers, scholars, and professionals are made accountable regarding quality of work. And the last one is searching as strategic exploration. This is a process where the searcher sources information broadly or comprehensively by determining appropriate search strategies for scope, while also recognizing that the value of information is dependent on the nature of the study, regardless if the information is packaged formally or informally. So this slide answers the first question, which is, which Nova Scotia high school courses promote information literacy? As you can see here, English language arts has the most information literacy. After that, it's social studies. There is a 20% decrease between English language arts and social studies. As you can see, mathematics and skills trades are quite low at around 10, 11%, and about the average is about 20%. This table helps answer a question, what aspects of the ACRL information literacy framework appear more frequently? As you can see, research as inquiry is the most frequent, and information has value is pretty much non-existent, it seems like. I just wanted to highlight as well that this is a subjective study, so the way that I interpret the information or the learning outcomes may be different than another person, which may skew these numbers a little. It seems like vague language is a major contributor to the lack of information literacy in the Nova Scotia learning outcomes. Those that contain threshold concepts mostly focused on teaching students how to answer complex questions through developing research methodologies and determining the credibility of the sources they find. However, the learning outcomes that promote information literacy often use vague terminology and lack clarification as to the motivation for the learning outcome. Here's an example of a learning outcome that is too simple to really understand. There's no indication as to the reason for analyzing the food package. Thus, it relies on the teacher's interpretation of the learning outcome. One limitation to this study is that the ACRL framework is not targeted towards secondary education, though it is still an appropriate tool to use as a starting point to guide the implementation of building information literacy into secondary education, if this is considered a desirable outcome. While the ACRL information literacy framework was not originally created for this purpose, it is proving to be a useful analytical tool to examine the presence of information literacy and to understand where information literacy deprivation occurs. Another limitation to this study is that it does not include other variables such as teachers' information literacy competencies, teachers' interpretations of the learning outcomes, nor does it include evidence of students' success rate for learning and using information literacy that is currently embedded in the curriculum. The absence of information literacy elements in the course learning outcomes should not be interpreted as a failure to adopt this framework, nor should it be interpreted as a failure to meet some other standard. The learning outcomes were used to guide this research in exploring what elements of information literacy are embedded in the curriculum in Nova Scotia. The purpose of the study was to map information literacy threshold concepts to the Nova Scotia secondary education learning outcomes created by the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development. Evidence from this study suggests that the government should consider examining the curriculum further to understand where information literacy is lacking. As social media becomes an increasingly important part of the way people retrieve and disseminate information, especially in younger generations, they should be given the opportunities to learn about the true nature of social media. The information literacy skills necessary for navigating today's information ecosystems should be reflected in education systems across Canada. There is no debating that social media will progressively become a larger part of our lives. So it is recommended that the Nova Scotia government consider conducting a thorough analysis of all aspects of the education system regarding information literacy. An assessment of the current school curriculum should be completed, and an evaluation of teacher education should be conducted to determine if teachers in Nova Scotia and across Canada are receiving enough pre-service information literacy instruction to interpret learning outcomes with an information literacy framework in mind. There are many factors other than learning outcomes that contribute to understanding the condition of information literacy. A study examining these variables would show the true nature of information literacy in Nova Scotia secondary education. Thank you.
Thank you, Cora, for that beautiful presentation. So we have a question, John?
Yeah, thank you, Phillips, and thank you, Corlin. I really enjoyed your presentation. I have a question, and based on some sort of anecdotal things I've observed here in Quebec, which is there's sometimes a disconnect between what the provincial or board level documentation says about what should be covered in the courses, particularly with respect to information literacy, and then what actually happens in the classroom. So that the framework is there, the courses say certain things will be covered, but in practice they're actually not. I'm just wondering whether your research encountered that at all, or whether that's something you've noticed in Nova Scotia.
It's hard to say because I haven't looked at teachers, or I haven't talked to any teachers or anyone who's actually been implementing the learning outcomes. When I started this project, my objective was to interview teachers and students, but that was a little bit too big. It was too big of a scope. But so I don't have the answer to that, but I do believe that research needs to be done to find those answers.
Okay, thank you. Next step of the project, maybe?
Yeah, of course. I would like to turn this into a PhD project. So yeah, that's what I plan on doing.
Okay, I look forward to seeing those results. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for the question, and thank you, Cora, for answering. So Since we don't have any other question, I'd like to hand over to Sherazad to introduce our next speaker.